In the early 1960s, Jaguar needed to replace the very popular XK150 model. Now that was always going to be a hard ask, and they did it with this, the Jaguar E-Type. The Jaguar E-Type is well known to be one of the most beautiful cars of all time. Apparently, if you listen to some of the folklore, Enzo Ferrari himself said as such. I don't think, no matter what Enzo thinks, I really do think this is possibly one of the most beautiful production cars ever made. And in today's C's Gearbox video, I'm getting to drive it. Now, they say you should never meet your heroes because maybe there'll be a disappointment. But this has been the all-time #1 car for me since I was probably like this big. And so, I'm going to be honest, this is an exceptionally exciting opportunity, one that I'm kind of slightly blown away by. How has it come about? Well, it's come about because I recently had a big birthday, I recently turned 40, and my wonderfully generous wife hired for me from Northumbria Classic Car hire this Jaguar E-Type, knowing it was my dream car. And I thought, well, do you know what? I've enjoyed it. I'm going to share this experience with you, the viewer. Okay, so I hope you enjoy this CS Gearbox video where I'm going to talk to you all about the Jaguar E-Type. So this particular E-Type is a Series 2 E-Type. You can tell this principally because the Series 1 cars had the faired-in headlamps and this Series 2 car doesn't. But there were lots of other subtle changes. The positioning of the indicators is another example. They were longer, thinner affairs just underneath the headlights, and a few other features as well, which I'll talk you through. It features a 4.2 litre 6-cylinder engine, which sounds gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous, and you know, is a really kind of willing engine. And what I've been really surprised with, and I have driven it a little bit so far to kind of get used to it, is I've been quite surprised just how well it takes up, even, you know, within modern traffic. It really, really is absolutely outstanding. So this one, I think, is a 1970, if I recall. I might have to correct that. A 1970 example, so right at the end of Series 2, just before Series 3 came in, which was quite a big change. But I will talk a little bit more about the history of this car and the history of sort of the E-Type itself a little bit more. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to take you for a bit more of a look round this magnificent car. So, as I've already mentioned, this is a Series 2 E-Type. The Series 1 had those slightly more faired-in headlamps that were under glass covers, but there were some safety regulations at the time that started to outlaw those from being possible. It was also necessary to fit bigger indicators and have bumpers that wrapped all the way round. But it still keeps that absolutely classically beautiful E-Type shape that was perhaps its kind of main selling point as a car. It's that coupe body that really, I think, accentuates just how beautiful this car is. For me, it's those kind of rear haunches and that sloping back that make it absolutely just the most stunning car. And then you sort of team that with the wire wheels, and you team that with beautiful spinners in the middle, and you cannot help but absolutely adore a Jaguar E-Type. Moving a little bit further round, I've managed to park in the Otterburn Battle Site car park here, and it's absolutely deserted. But as per usual, every time I seem to film lately, it's really windy. There are some absolutely stunning features about this car. Let's talk you through a few of my favourites. So let's talk about the wheels. E-Types with these beautiful wire wheels, you know, they are, you know, absolutely stunning to look at, and they are a set of wire wheels. Really, really stunning thing. One of my other favourite things about this particular E-Type, I think the Series 1s and the Series 2 cars had this, not one, not two, but 3 windscreen wipers. So that is, you know, quite exceptional, isn't it, when you look at the triple wiper action that's going on there. The hugely long bonnet of an E-Type is something else which is really well known for. And, you know, what I will say is that long bonnet is great when you're out on an open road, less great when you're sort of pottering through a town or a city, like the city of Newcastle, which I did earlier. That was quite an adventure when it wasn't quite fully warmed up yet. But it's those iconic lines. They really are beautiful. I love the kind of wide mouth grille and that profile of the car there, right through to the little Jaguar badge. Moving on then to the interior of the E-Type. It is an absolute classic, isn't it? Big wooden rimmed steering wheel, fantastic clear dials, and you know that kind of protruding gear lever, beautiful big chrome gear lever alongside that gearbox stick, which takes a little bit of getting used to. Inside here we have a great many raft of switches, all helpfully labelled for me, and all the gauges like oil pressure, water and fuel, which it has used surprisingly little of. Maybe not. On here, one of my favourite things are these lovely little hazard, the kind of the little indicator directional things. I think the little lights, warning lights. That's what I think they're called. But anyway, the indicator lights are absolutely beautiful, and in operation they're amazing. I'll try and show you them in operation. Down here we have a stereo as well, for which the speakers are located just in the footwells. Big, vast footwell, and then we turn around. And of course, this one is not a 4-seat version. It just has this big, long load area in the back as well, where you can put all your things for a weekend before you motor off to some hot, far-flung part of the country, or even the world. Love the old school switches. If it'll focus, there it is. Focus, there we go. Old school lights there for things like the rear window, heated window, the handbrake light, things like the door handle, which is a push down, not a pull up. I thought I was trapped earlier. And the lovely window winders. Truly a magnificent place to be. Come on, focus, there we go. Truly a magnificent place to be. So let's talk a little bit more about the changes that went through the E-Type in its lifetime. So it was actually introduced in 1961, not 1963 as I said earlier. And in 1961 it was available with its 3.8 litre engine from launch. This was the engine that propelled the car to 150 miles an hour, being one of the very first production cars to make that figure, and famously doing so on the very first stretch of motorway. By 1969, the car needed some updating, and in purist's eyes, it was the beginning of the decline of the E-Type. But in all honesty, it was necessary to update the E-Type to keep the order books full. A lot of these changes were mandated from America, where safety regulations and emissions regulations were starting to get tighter, which I think if you look at the difference between Europe and America now, it's quite ironic that it was America that brought in all these emissions regulations, isn't it? But there we go. So with the E-Type in particular then, the changes were not just cosmetic. Underneath, the brakes were uprated. The gearbox was actually, the kind of mechanism in the gearbox was changed in order to make it smoother and less noisy. And some bits which were sort of from the XJ6, which have been more recently developed, were also incorporated. The 3.8 litre engine disappeared and was only left now with the 4.2. But there were some cosmetic changes also. If you look at the rear lights on this, they're very different to the rear lights on a Series 1 car, because on a Series 1 car, they would be sort of a thin strip of lights just around here. The bumper now had to wrap all the way round, and you can see it's protected by some weather stripping also. Around the front, some of the key changes were, again, bumpers and lights. In particular, those fared-in headlights that the E-Type was so famous for in its first generation disappeared, and the larger, more reflective indicators at the bottom with the incorporated side lights, again replacing what were a very thin strip sitting just above the bumper in the Series 1 car. Interior-wise, there were many changes also, including hazard warnings, which hadn't featured on the Series 1 car, and various other bits to kind of meet uprated regulations. I think, to my mind, though, the Series 2 retains just as much beauty as the Series 1. It really has got that iconic shape still. And you know what? I think it is an exceptional looking car in either Series 1 or Series 2. Guys. Later on, they did update it further. There was a 2+2 version, which had 4 seats, which featured a little bit of a higher roofline, never quite as good looking. And then the Series 3 came along, which had some more fundamental changes, including, though, the introduction of a V12 engine. But those more fundamental changes perhaps took it a bit further away from what the purists wanted. And, ultimately, it is all in the eye of the beholder. The E-Type continued to sell relatively well until, of course, the controversy got worse because they replaced it with the XJS. Anyway, I think that's enough talking about it. Should we go for a drive? I think so. So let's go for a drive. The seatbelt's an interesting mechanism back here, very different to a modern one, and it kind of involves a little bit of a hooking and a clipping. But once you're in, you tighten it back down, and then let's make our go, shall we? So we are up here towards the Scottish borders, actually, and we're going to head ourselves back towards Newcastle. Let's go. Okay then, so what is it really like to drive a Jaguar E-Type? Well, a Jaguar E-Type is iconic for so many reasons, but the first of those is really about this long, iconic bonnet you look over, and that really is outstanding. It's such a great view as you look over. You look over this long bonnet, and especially up here in the Northumbria National Park, which is just absolutely beautiful. You have to adjust your expectations, I would say, when driving a Jaguar E-Type or any car of this vintage, really. I hopped out of driving a modern Mercedes into this, and you have to really adjust your expectations. It is gruff, it's low down torquey, the steering is heavy, but that's exactly as it's supposed to be. And what is really amazing about this car is the ability that it has to cruise. It just effortlessly glides. The other thing which I think I've really noticed about this car is the torque that it has. So you can be, doing sort of 30, 40 in fourth and put your foot down and it'll just keep on going. It is a 4-speed box in these, as was typical. No overdrive either on these, which some did have in this era. But as we kind of just drive over this beautiful, beautiful countryside now, it's just a lovely place to be. You don't need any other gear than fourth. And that's exactly what this car is for. It is for cruising. And you just cruise. I can absolutely understand why people have sort of talked about E-Type saying, oh, you could drive to Monaco and back in this and you'd feel totally fine. You absolutely would. I could drive this for hours and I think I'd be absolutely fine. As long as I kept my eyes on where I was going and where the corners were, because we are on these twisty Northumbria back roads, and that really is outstanding. So driving along then in an E-Type, the other thing I think that really amazes me is just how much you completely keep up with anything modern. The brakes feel really well assured. The acceleration is good. The handling is nice. It's also, it is quite a wide car by 1970s and 60s and 70s standards, but by modern standards, it's really quite narrow. So you can go along these roads like the one I'm on now, which is not the widest road in the world, and yet still feel very much in your side of the road. Oh, I tell you what, this really is an outstanding driving experience. I'm over the moon that I've got to have a chance of doing this. And I did just drive. The first 10 minutes was through the city and it was a bit stressful. But I tell you, once I got onto the A roads, I just had this massive grin on my face the entire way. Oh, do you know what? Do meet your heroes. This is outstanding. trying to think what else I can tell you to relay the incredible driving experience that this is. I guess I'd say, having driven kind of modern cars, modern Mercedes, modern BMWs, and now having driven, also Citroen 2CVs and all the things I've even driven, old Lancias, old tractors, and all this kind of stuff. The E-Type is just totally different. It is an entirely different affair from anything I've driven, and it's just that complete and utter ability to cruise effortlessly. And you know what, you have to bear with it. It doesn't like slowing down very much, and getting used to the clutch action and where the accelerator, how sensitive it is, took a little bit. But for wending through this Northumbria National Park, there is genuinely no car I would rather be in. This is incredible.
A great thanks to Northumbria Classic Car Hire for hiring me the E-Type for the day. Truly a great experience, and one I was enjoying so much that I failed to record any kind of outro to the video at all. So please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.